Hello and welcome to another video. This is my newest pattern. It's a checkerboard square with a moss stitch border. The square is 12 inches by 12 inches and the written pattern is very detailed, and I am making this video to augment the pattern because some of the places in the pattern are a bit tricky. So you'll see that the pattern has a dark square, medium, dark, medium, dark. And then the second strip is medium, light, medium, light, medium. And then same as the first strip, same as the second strip, and same as the first strip again. What I'm going to show you today is only a small portion of that, these 9 squares right here. Also, I am using different yarn. I think cotton yarn shows up better in videos. So I've got Hobby Lobby I Love This Cotton in a light blue, medium blue, and a dark blue. Bear with me as I start with the dark square. I know that this dark yarn is not as easy to see, but I want to go ahead and start it as close to the pattern as possible, so please forgive the dark yarn. Hopefully my light is bright enough you can see. We start with a slip knot on the hook, chain 7. One, two, three, four, 5, 6, 7. Notice that I'm making my chain loose. Also, I wanted to point out that the pattern says to work in the back loops of the chain, not in the back bumps. Some patterns tell you to turn the chain over and work into the back bumps. Please don't do that on this pattern because we're going to use the beginning chain for an edging stitch later, and it's easier to work that if you do it this way. So pull up a loop in the second chain from the hook and in every chain back to the beginning. By the way, I'm using a 5.5 millimeter hook, which is smaller than normally used in Tunisian crochet, even though it's the right size for this yarn. You're often advised in Tunisian crochet to use a larger hook. However, in this particular pattern, we're not going to do the larger hook. I'll explain why in a minute. Okay, so we now have 7, 2, 4, 6, 7 loops on the hook. Now we're working our return pass. Yarn over, pull through 1 stitch. Then yarn over, pull through 2. Repeating until you have 2 loops left on the hook. Now, let me show you a sample. This is a smaller sample of the same pattern, and this one is worked in acrylic yarn. And I want you to notice that the colors are carried up along the edge of the squares. And so I'm going to show you how I start those additional colors. So what I'm going to do is turn the piece over to the back, and I have grabbed my medium color yarn and I'm going to tie it onto the chain, the beginning chain over here at this end of row 1 before I finish the last stitch. And I use a smaller crochet hook because it's easier for me I pull through one loop and I take the tail and I pull the tail through that loop and just make a knot. Now, turning the piece back to the front, over to the front, I should say. Now, I will take the medium colored yarn and put it over the dark yarn, and then yarn over and finish the stitch. Now look on the back and I'll show you what that did. That started carrying the medium color under the dark color on row 1. Now we won't need the medium color until row 8, but we're going to capture it, so to speak, or carry it along the edge on every row. Okay, so row 2, pull up a loop in every vertical bar, and on the last edge stitch we're going to go under both strands along the edge, yarn over, pull up a loop. So we should have 7 loops on the hook, 2, 4, 6, 7. Yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2, till we have 2 loops left. And here's what I do. I need to put the carried yarn over the working yarn like this before I finish that stitch. Now if I keep doing that over and over again, I'm going to get a tangled up mess over here with my yarn balls. So what I do is, and usually I do this before, not after the last stitch, is I flip the whole thing over. Let me take out the last stitch and show you what I mean. So yarn over, pull through 2. Okay, now I've got this medium yarn back here. So what I'm going to do is take the whole mess and turn it around my hook like a Ferris wheel, with the hook as the stable part of that maneuver. That keeps the yarn balls from getting twisted. And then I take the carried yarn, put it over the top of the working yarn, yarn over, and pull through the last 2. Okay. Now row 3, same thing. Now I want to point out something important with this particular pattern. What you're trying to accomplish is squares, and the squares have to have the same number of rows as stitches, so 7 rows, 7 stitches. However, people typically make a Tunisian simple stitch taller than it is wide. In fact, if you look at videos on the internet, you'll see a lot of people yanking those vertical strands way tall. That won't work with this particular design. We need to keep those vertical bars short. So do not yank up on them. Keep them very close to the fabric as you pull them up. Okay, 7 vertical bars, yarn over, pull through 1. Now on that particular chain, that first stitch of the row, we want a short stitch, so we didn't yank up on it. But on the rest of these, we're working horizontal strands, and we need a little bit wider horizontal strands in order to get a completely square piece. So notice how I'm pulling those horizontal strands pretty wide. I went too far. Okay, here we go. Last 2 strands on the hook, flip it around, like a Ferris wheel. Bring the carried yarn over the working yarn, yarn over, pull through 2. Let's look at the back. You can see that the carried yarn is going up through the strands on the back, and it'll be ready for us when we need it. And I'm going to go ahead and work a few more rows and come back. All right, I have 7 rows, and I'll show you how I count. Count the one that's still on the hook as a row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I count the stitches along the edge. Okay, now I'm ready to change colors because for the 8th row I need the medium blue. So I am taking the dark color and putting it between my first 2 fingers to just keep it out of the way. And then I yarn over with the medium color, and it's now ready to go. So I'll work that square and come back. I'm almost finished with the 7th medium blue row, and I thought I'd show it to you in this color because it's easier to see what's going on. Okay, now for the last row of each square, I have to take the working yarn and put it over between my fingers and then pull up the other color from behind and yarn over and pull through. So you can see how I've carried the other color up along the side of each square. Okay, I've now got 3 squares in the strip. I'm ready to work the last stitch of the 3rd square. And since this is the last square in my strip for this small sample, I'm going to yarn over with both colors of yarn and pull through, and I'm going to cut both strands. And I'm going to pull them out like that. Now, we will close this row after we've completed the entire square. So just leave those hanging loose. We'll weave those in later. The next thing we want to do is start down at the bottom again, and this time we're going to start with the medium color, light color, and medium color. So we need to attach the medium color in the correct place down here at the bottom. So here's what I'm doing. I'm going to prepare a loop. I'm not putting a knot in it. And I'm going to pull up the loop in the 7th chain of the beginning chain 7. So we need to count and make sure that we see clearly where we're supposed to pull this up. Let me count this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so that right there is where I want to pull up my loop. And I'm going to chain 1, and I'm not going to tighten that down because that chain is the one we're going to work into when we come back the other direction. So I'm going to chain 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I made my chain loose because remember the horizontals are supposed to stay loose. Now let me take these 2 strands of yarn and just give them a quick tie just one time to keep them stable. But remember, I want to make sure I still have 7 chains. There's the 7th one that I've got my loop coming out of. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. So I'm working in the back loop of the chain. Pull up a loop in every chain. Make sure I have 7 loops on the chain, on the hook. 2, 4, 6, 7. And then I'm going to work into the stitch along the side. It's actually the end of a row, but it's the same thing as a stitch actually. So let's count backwards. I just want to make sure I get it in the correct stitch. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that stitch right there is where we're going to work to pull up our 8th loop. And I don't want to work in the front loop. I don't want to work under the front loop and the back loop. Instead, I'm working in the back loop, and there is a loop behind it, which pretty much usually I have to turn over in order to see it. And it requires a little bit of fiddling to get the hook in there. So do you see now I have my hook is under 2 strands. Yarn over and pull up a loop. Now, to do the return pass, I yarn over and pull through 2. I don't chain 1 because I've already got an edge along the left side of the square. So I pull through 2 on all the rest of these stitches until I get 2 loops on the hook, and this is where I need to introduce my next color, just like I did before. So I'm turning it over using my skinny hook, putting it right there in that strand. Getting my light color of yarn. It's really not a whole lot lighter than the medium blue, but it is lighter. Pull it through, and then take the tail and pull it through the loop that I just made, and then pull the tail all the way through, and I've basically made a knot. Now, turning back to the front, I take the light yarn and put it over the medium yarn just to hold it there and finish the stitch. So let's look at the back of that. I don't know if you can see. There's the light yarn that was tied right there, and it's been captured under this strand. Okay, turning over to the front again. Just continue on, and I'm going to one more time show you where to put the hook when we get over to the other edge of this square. And I also want to point out that when you get to this vertical bar, sometimes it gets short or it disappears, so make sure that you have 7 loops on your hook, 2, 4, 6, 7, before you work into the next row. So here we are at the next row. We're not working under the front loop, we're working under the back loop, and there is another loop behind there. I usually have to turn it over to see it. So in there and in there, and I do usually have to manipulate it with my fingers, which is an extra step, but it makes it so worth it in my opinion, because the seam you get along this edge between the 2 strips is just much nicer looking. Okay, ready to do our Ferris wheel flip. Bring the light yarn over the medium. Continue by finishing that last stitch. Okay, I decided to change to white for the middle square because the other blue color was just too similar in appearance to this medium and I couldn't see it. Okay, so I just want to show you with lighter colored yarn what I'm doing here when I get to the edge, the left edge of the squares. So I've got 2, 4, 6, 7 loops on my hook, and then I insert my hook under the back loop, and there's another loop behind it that usually requires some manipulation with my finger, but let me show you without my big fingers in the way. I'm going under this loop and this one behind it. So you see there's the front loop and the hook is going under the back loop and the one that's even farther behind that. Yarn over, pull up a loop, and now we have 8 loops, 2, 4, 6, 8, and we yarn over and pull through 2 at a time. Ferris wheel. Hopefully that's a little easier to see in the lighter colored yarn. Okay, I've now completed 9 squares, and I have pulled both colors through the last stitch, and this would be where I would cut the yarn. Now I'm only going to cut one color because I'm going to use the other color to make the edging round, and the pattern says to leave the dark color and use that for your edging round, but because it's harder to see, I'm going to cut the dark one on this sample and use the medium color for the edging. So what I'm going to do is chain, use the medium color to chain 1, and pull down on that dark color and keep it behind. Okay, now this is kind of hard to see because I'm on the dark square again, but I'll try and keep it close to the light. For the very first stitch of the edging round on this side, we're going to work between the edge stitch and the vertical bar. So I am inserting my hook under there, making a single crochet. All the rest of the stitches along this side are going to be modified single crochet stitches. So we go under the vertical bar and under one of the horizontal bars, the one that's closest to the front, closest to facing you, and work a single crochet. Under the horizontal, the vertical and the horizontal, single crochet. Okay, now that we're in the lighter color, maybe it'll be easier to see. So under the vertical bar and the horizontal bar next to it, single crochet. Alright, I have worked the modified single crochet to the end of this side, but I need one more, and I'm working that in the space between the vertical bars. So do you see where I'm going there? Right there under 2 strands. And it's just a plain single crochet. Okay, then I chain 1 to make the corner. And now I'm working in the edges of the rows, and there should be 7 in the dark blue, so I'm counting from over here to make sure I start correctly here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. So I'm going under 2 strands to make a single crochet. The rest of them are easy to figure out. Okay, I have come to the end of the side, and I've counted, and there is a multiple of 7 stitches. We have 7 rows in each square, so the number of single crochet along the side needs to equal the same number of rows. Now I'm going to chain 1 to make the corner and turn it 90 degrees. And here's where the first stitch of the next side goes. And now I'm working modified single crochets again, but this time, in addition to going under the vertical bar, I'm going under 2 horizontal bars. 2 horizontal strands, I should say. So the first stitch on this side is not a modified single crochet, it's just a regular one. But all the rest, until we get to the other side, other corner, are modified single crochet stitches, which means we are just inserting under the vertical bar and the horizontal strands. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6. There's my vertical strand, and we'll go under those 2. I take that back. Well, yeah, this is tough right here. There we go. We'll go under those 2. Single crochet. Under the vertical, under the 2 horizontal. Okay, I have one more stitch, one more modified single crochet on this side. And to make a multiple of 7 along this side, I need one more. So I'm working in the space, or the area between this vertical bar and the edge stitch. Okay, chain 1 and turn. This is the last of the 4 sides, and this one is very similar to working the edge stitches of each of these strips, because we are working in the back loop and that other back loop. See, there are 2 strands there that you want to get your hook under. finished the fourth side. I've done a chain one, and now I'm going to cut the yarn, pull it out of the last loop, and work an invisible join with a needle and weave in all my ends. On the invisible join, I bring the yarn over to the, not the first single crochet, but the second. And let that new stitch basically cover up the top of the other one. And I like to tie a knot or two in these ends before I work them in. But that's totally up to you. But this is the back of the square. You can see all the carried colors. And this is the front of the square. And of course you've just done only one edging round, and that leaves open the possibility for many other rounds to be added to it. The pattern, the original square for the pattern, is done with moss stitch. So I did the first round in dark green, and then I did a round of medium green in moss stitch, and then the last round is back to the dark green. But there are other possibilities for other kinds of edging. Just let your imagination run wild. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe.